Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Muslim Reactions. Inshallah, we'll be listening to this guy. So he has something to say regarding if the disciples were at the crucifixion or not. And inshallah, I'll be responding to what he's going to say. Inshallah, I'll be going back to the Gospels and listen or hear what the Gospel has to say regarding if they were present or they were not. And then don't forget, if you're here to subscribe, do that, and also like, share, and also comment, say something. Inshallah, I'll be reading all of these. So let's go.
The Quran contradicts the most fundamental, provable fact in all of ancient history, the death and the resurrection of Christ.
Bring me one first-hand account from Jesus' disciples of his resurrection.
Everybody who Jesus knew was there.
No,
they weren't. Are you sure about that?
Luke chapter 23, starting in verse 44. Watch this, verse 48. And when all the people who had gathered for this spectacle saw what had happened, they returned home beating their breasts. Right here, verse 49. But all those who knew Jesus, including the woman who had followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching these things.
Okay.
So
look, here's the thing though.
So if you notice, this is not actually the question he was asking regarding. The Muslim guy was asking regarding the resurrection, but then he shifted the post and answered something different, the crucifixion. So inshallah, we'll be looking at these and we'll try to see if the Gospels said the disciples were there. But then before we go into the Gospels, we should try to understand something. The closer a writing is to the event, the more reliable it is. Okay, we shouldn't forget these rule. And then let's go to the Gospels and see what it has to say. Remember, Mark is the first written Gospel, followed by Matthew, then Luke, then John. John is the last of the four Gospels written. So now we'll be looking at these, comparing them side by side and see what they have to say. So what really transpired? In the Gospel of Mark, we see Jesus made a prophecy, or was saying something regarding a prophecy that the disciples would desert him, the disciples would flee. Mark categorically said they all forsook Jesus and deserted him. When we go to the second gospel that came after Mark, which is Matthew, Matthew said exactly the same thing. They all fled and forsook Jesus, they left him. And then when we go to the third gospel, this event is skipped. After the arrest of Jesus, he was taken away and no one fled. This event or this happening is missing in the Gospel of Luke. And also in the Gospel of John, the same thing happened. This event is missing. Now the question is, what did Mark said regarding the crucifixion itself and those that were there looking? Were the disciples there? This is exactly what Mark said in chapter 15 verse 39. Now when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, truly this man was God's son. Verse 40, and this is interesting. There were also women looking from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph, and Salome. These used to follow him and provided for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. So you see, in Mark, in the Gospel of Mark, there is no mention of any man present. But then these women were looking or watching from a far distance. But however, no mention of any man present and no mention of any disciple, nor those who knew Jesus. Now let's quickly check the Gospel of Matthew and see what he has to say regarding this event. So looking at Matthew 27 verse 54, it says, now when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, truly this man was God's son. 55. Many women were also there, exactly what Mark said, looking on from a distance, exactly what Mark said, watching from afar. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, the same name Mark mentioned, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Exactly what Mark said. No, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph. However, let's look at what Luke has to say regarding this, because it is interesting how all of a sudden the whole thing changed. We have additional people looking from afar. Luke, of course, did not mention any name specifically, but then he said all those who knew Jesus were there watching from afar, including women. And this will make you wonder why, when we talk about disciples being there, the Christians are not honest about it. They won't quote the earlier Gospels, which is Mark and Matthew. They would rather run to the Gospel of Luke and quote Luke. Luke is not a disciple, neither is he an eyewitness. So in this, Matthew is more reliable than Luke. Matthew, of course, is not an eyewitness, but then he has something that is similar to what Matthew has. Okay, and this even furthermore supports what Matthew has. And when it comes to John, John entirely is something else. It is a contradiction to what we have that is earlier before it. And this tells you why scholars would say, John, the Gospel of John is a revised or a revision of what came before it. Okay, why? How is it possible that the mother of Jesus is not there? How is it possible that no disciple is present at the crucifixion? How is it possible that even the women that were witnesses were looking from afar? So he brought them very close, right there at the foot of the cross. So it is left for you to decide. But I know, because of the later events, that no disciple was present at the crucifixion. They were all ignorant of what happened to Jesus. They knew Jesus was taken away, but were totally ignorant of what happened. All they knew was hearsays, hearsays, hearsays. And this is an advice to the Muslims. Please, if you don't understand topics, please don't jump into conversations with these guys. They would laugh at you, and they would, cherry pick verses and make you look like a fool. But this I say, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.